5,000 years ago, in what is now Latvia, a young man lay dying. His body showed no signs of injury. He wasn't starving. He hadn't drowned, nor frozen, and yet within hours, he would be dead. Far away in Sweden, a woman his age faced the same quiet doom, healthy, vibrant, yet succumbing to something unseen, something merciless. They never met, never shared a home or tribe, but they shared a killer, an ancient murderer with no face, no blade, just a whisper of death carried on the breath of the living. What connected them wasn't war or famine or accident. It was a pathogen, a microscopic assassin known today as Yersinia pestis. You may not know the name, but you know its legacy. This is the bacterium behind the Black Death, the plague of Justinian and centuries of human devastation. But few realize this deadly foe didn't begin its slaughter in the Middle Ages. Long before medieval Europe trembled under its grip, Yersinia pestis may have already cast its shadow over early human civilization, ushering in what some now suspect was the world's first pandemic. For decades, scientists believed that Y. pestis evolved quietly from Y. pseudotuberculosis around 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, biding its time. The common view was that it didn't become dangerous until later, around the time of the Justinian plague in the 6th century A.D. But this theory began to unravel when geneticists started finding Y. pestis DNA in Neolithic and Copper Age human remains across Europe and Western Asia. Not just one or two isolated cases, but dozens. Dozens of individuals from vastly different regions, their teeth and bones laced with traces of the same deadly bacteria. Some from Latvia, others from Germany, Sweden, and beyond. At first, this was seen as a curiosity. After all, disease was rampant in the ancient world. Malaria, tuberculosis, even leprosy plagued early humans. But then, researchers began connecting the dots. These weren't scattered deaths. These were outbreaks, multiple, geographically, widespread, with alarming frequency. Entire families were found buried together, many with signs of plague infection. One burial site in Sweden revealed a staggering truth. 17% of the individuals studied had been infected. In one closely related family group of 38 people, nearly a third carried the bacteria. Many had suffered from pneumonic plague, the deadliest and most contagious form, capable of killing its host in under 48 hours. This wasn't just disease, this was catastrophe, and it wasn't happening in isolation. Around 3450 BCE, human populations across Eurasia began to crash. Archaeological records show a sudden and dramatic decline in settlements. Up to 50% of some regional populations vanished. What had once been vibrant farming communities fell silent. Massive mega-settlements in places like Maidanetske, Ukraine, home to tens of thousands, were abandoned, some reduced to charred ruins. Evidence suggests some may have been deliberately burned, perhaps in an effort to halt the spread of contagion. Grain stores attracted rodents. Rodents attracted fleas. Fleas carried death. A perfect storm for an ancient pandemic. The timing of these declines, eerily synchronized with the appearance of plague DNA in the archaeological record, is more than coincidence. Scientists began to wonder, was this the true beginning of Y? Pestis's reign of terror? Could the very roots of human civilization have been shaken by a prehistoric pandemic? Genetic analysis of the bacteria found in Neolithic remains suggests that this ancient strain lacked certain traits seen in later outbreaks. It may not have been as infectious, perhaps unable to survive in flea guts, suggesting that early transmission may have been direct through droplets in the air. But despite this, it spread over generations, in waves. One family gravesite spanned over 120 years, 6 generations, 3 separate waves of plague. It wasn't a single outbreak. It was a recurring nightmare. and it left scars far beyond the bones. During this period, the great megalithic monuments, stone circles, burial mounds, began to vanish, not because the knowledge was lost, but because the builders were gone, entire. Cultures seemed to recede, replaced by warier, more isolated communities. Violence increased. Mass graves from the time show signs of trauma. Children, warriors, whole families cut down. Was it desperation, or the unraveling of social bonds under the weight of fear? Some researchers believe the plague may have triggered societal collapse, not just by killing, but by breaking the fragile web of early civilization. Settlements grew dense, hygiene was poor, and food security was vulnerable to disruption. Disease thrived, fear spread. In the chaos, fertility rates may have dropped, while violence and migration soared. A biological shockwave rippling across continents, but not everyone agrees. While infection rates in some areas were high, others, such as skeletal remains studied in Germany, showed much lower rates between 1.5% and 5%. Significant, yes, but perhaps not enough to explain a continent-wide crash. Some scientists argue the Neolithic decline was likely a combination of factors: the emergence of plague, climate cooling, agricultural failure, and mass migration driven by conflict and fear. A perfect convergence of pressures that fractured the foundations of early farming societies. Still, the evidence of plague's role grows stronger, and even if it wasn't the only villain, it was almost certainly among the deadliest. Paleogenetic research has unearthed clues that place Y. pestis not as a late-stage terror, but as a prime suspect in one of humanity's first great falls. A silent killer stalking the edge of history long before its name would be known, So, as we look back into the mists of time, we find not just bones and tools, but echoes of suffering, resilience, and survival. The Neolithic was a time of progress, but also of peril. A time when humanity took its first bold steps toward civilization, only to be nearly undone by a force it could neither see nor understand. But we endured, we adapted, and we remembered. If you're fascinated by stories like these, where bones whisper secrets and ancient pathogens speak from the past, make sure to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Extinct World. Because the deeper we dig into our history, the more we realize extinction is never the end of the story, it's just the beginning.